remarks.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending the second workshop in the rulemaking to update rules for safety, reliability, and resilience of the electric distribution system. I am Commissioner Matt Baker, and I've been assigned, I am the assigned commissioner on this proceeding. The purpose of this proceeding is to take a closer look at safety and reliability issues affecting electric customers of investor-owned utilities throughout the state. Reliability issues have many causes, including aging equipment, climate-driven extreme weather events, and wildfire mitigation measures. For many Californians, a reliable electric grid is not just a convenience of modern life, it is an absolute necessity. In the first workshop, we discussed reliability reportings and thresholds currently on the books and identified how the varied timing and formats might make it difficult for the Commission and the public to ascertain the true picture of system reliability. Parties provided helpful comments and recommendations in response to that workshop. It became clear that this proceeding should aim to consolidate and streamline data reporting requirements and find a way to report outage information at a more granular level with a goal of improving communication about outages to customers and local governments. This workshop is intended to take those recommendations and get down to a specific set of details about what is the most efficient way to get at that data that we need to accomplish the goals in this track of the proceeding. And so I guess I would describe it as if we want to identify the circuits that suffer from reliability concerns, are the utilities already reporting that data? Do the utilities have that data? Is there a need for more information, or are there holes like we talked about at the last workshop? But here today, I really want everybody to make sure that they remember that the short-term goal of this proceeding is not just about collecting more data. The overarching goal of this track is to examine outages from the customer's experiences. Are the outages resulting from system issues like infrastructure that's at the end of its useful life, or that might have, or may have been built for a different set of uses that it has now outgrown? Or are most of the outages from wildfire mitigation measures, in which case there would be a different response to that? Once we can pinpoint that, we can move quickly to finding ways to communicate the why to customers so that they can make decisions that make the most sense for them. I'm hoping that this proceeding can move quickly on those issues. And I want to express a little bit of impatience that kind of we are where we are. But with that, I also will note that I will be attending the entire workshop. I do have to pull out for 2 short meetings. And I look forward to a lively and frank discussion. And with that, I'll turn it back over to staff. Thank you.
Now I'll go over the objective for today's workshop. The focus for today's workshop will be to engage stakeholders in how we can improve reliability data reporting. Like I mentioned previously, we'll be soliciting input on reliability data reporting for a data governance protocol, data dictionary, and data reporting schema. And also, like I mentioned earlier, we'll be taking everyone's input and we'll be integrating those into a proposal. So as a refresher, I'll quickly go over why we're here in the first place and why the Commission decided to have this proceeding. Kind of like what Commissioner Baker had mentioned, the Commission opened this proceeding in May of last year to consider changes to existing policies, procedures, and rules regarding the safety, reliability, and resiliency of electrical distribution systems. And as far as what prompted the Commission to reconsider changing and updating these rules, the Commission recognized that aging infrastructure, climate-driven events become more common, changes to how wildfires are mitigated, a greater focus on equity and outage responses, and our state's decarbonization goals all prompted the Commission to consider whether its current rules and practices were sufficient to address those areas of concerns that I just mentioned. And next to present the issues identified so far in this proceeding is my colleague, Eric Swanson, and I'll hand it off to you, Eric.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Swanson. I'm a research data specialist with the CPUC Safety Policy Division. And I will be summarizing the reliability reporting issues raised so far in this proceeding and identifying the issues that we plan to address with Track 1. Next slide, please. The scoping memo for this proceeding presented the following topics to be addressed with Track 1. What data submissions should the investor-owned utilities, or IOUs, submit to the CPUC that enhance current outage reporting? What enhancements and or updates should the CPUC consider to improve utility data submissions? What data definitions and reporting structure should be established to determine which data is reported to the CPUC in a streamlined process with A, reporting thresholds, B, standardized definitions, and C, alignment with industry standards? What updates, if any, should the CPUC make to GO, or General Order 166, for the purposes of reliability thresholds and reporting requirements? And finally, what existing data sets, data points, and reporting structure should be used or established to aid the CPUC's understanding of whether there are patterns of outages that disproportionately affect tribal governments, rural, disadvantaged, and or low-income communities? Next slide, please. Following the scoping memo, we have solicited and received input from many parties, including the IOUs, state and local governments, and community-based organizations. We received input first with the responses to the request for proposals, and then with the first workshop in February of this year. Next slide, please. Collaboration between parties in the responses to the request for proposals and the first workshop built on the scoping memo to identify more specific issues, including but not limited to recommendations to frame reporting by customer experience using meter level data, measure impacts of outages on different types of vulnerable communities, for example, medical baseline customers, consolidate and streamline data reporting requirements, report outage information at smaller scales, such as city, circuit, and individual levels, and to make that information more available to stakeholders, improve IOU communication about outages to customers, especially during major outage incidents, and to develop scalable categories for emergency and disaster events, including catastrophic events. Some of these issues will be addressed in later tracks with the benefit of the clearer picture of the reliability status quo that we hope to achieve with Track 1. Next slide, please. To briefly summarize the current reliability reporting system, the CPUC relies on 5 primary data sources for reliability assessment, supplemented by ad hoc data requests. This system leads to the first issue we've identified to address with Track 1, data siloing. Each report is received by a different part of the CPUC or state government, and each has different formatting requirements, such as geographic scale and the variables included. This creates data silos where incompatible formats are barriers to integrating information between reports. For example, PSPS postseason reports describe outage impacts on medical baseline customers at the census tract level, while the WMP QDR outage incident data does not include this variable. However, the different geographic scales are a barrier to integrating the 2 data sources into a more holistic picture of reliability in the state. Next slide, please. We've also identified issues in the timing of the CPUC's receipt of reliability data. There can be a lag of up to 10 months between an outage event and the CPUC receiving a report assessing it. This creates gaps in the CPUC's understanding of the reliability status quo that may require ad hoc data requests to fill. Next slide, please. We have also identified several areas where enhanced reliability reporting would improve the CPUC's understanding of the reliability status quo and ability to identify trends in reliability data. This includes planned outage data, where expanding outage incident reporting to include details on all planned outages, in addition to unplanned outages, could provide a more complete picture of all outages. Also, outage cause reporting, where adding outage cause categories from the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IEEE, standards, for example, their standards on weather conditions, could improve our understanding of risks, such as whether heat waves are associated with increases in specific types of equipment failure. Also, the impact of reliability issues on a diverse set of communities, where linking outage incident data to meter level data could improve assessment of whether outages have disparate impacts on different communities. And finally, the impact of emergency and disaster outage events, where expanding emergency and disaster event categories beyond the major event day and GO166 major outage categories could improve estimation of the impacts of these events on customers and better track trends in their cause and severity. Next slide, please. Are there any questions on the issues that have been raised in this proceeding thus far?
None at this moment, Eric.
All right, then I will turn things over to my colleague, Brittany Gaines, who will discuss a possible framework for addressing the issues raised in track 1. Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brittany Gaines. I'm a research data specialist in the Safety Policy Division of the CPUC. I will be covering our proposed frameworks for data management and reporting for reliability to address the issues raised during this proceeding surrounding reliability, data management, and reporting. Before I get started, I would like to invite our program manager, Jim Cho, to speak on some key topics we would like to highlight for this portion of our workshop presentation. Jim?
Thank you, Brittany. My name is Jim Cho. I'm the Program Manager in Security and Resilience. And this will just be very short. I just want to make sure we're tying this back to some of the things that Commissioner Baker had said. And I think, just to paraphrase, I think one of the things when we're going through this, you're going to see a lot of sort of what would be the framework. We want to make sure that, number one is that we're getting organized. 2 is that we're getting coordinated. And then, but we're doing it in a way that's reasonable and feasible, so we can see results and the customers from their perspective can see the results and get the information that they need and look at things, be able to look at things from the customer experience. So as we go through this, there'll be a lot of pieces. This is just to set the understanding of some of the pieces that we will need. But it doesn't, each one of them can be done at a certain level of effort in a way that to start off with. So I just want people to just kind of, as they're thinking about what they're going to say later today, just keep in mind the idea of kind of feasible and reasonable to get into what we need to get done. To get to the end goal is to really be able to tell that story to customers to understand what's going on and be able to do things to mitigate some of the issues they may be facing. So back to you, Brittany.
Thank you very much, Jim, for those remarks. All right, next slide, please. The recommendations we will introduce today were informed and developed using the feedback we received throughout this proceeding from the request for proposals and Workshop 1. Overall, our goal was to develop foundational processes that create a more seamless data sharing between IOUs and the CPUC. This would enable more precise and detailed measurements of electric reliability. There are three outcomes we aim to address with these recommendations we are proposing today. First, we aim to reduce data siloing. This is due to multiple streams of reliability reporting with different reporting requirements, data set formats, and levels of information provided. As my colleague Eric discussed earlier, there are currently 6 sources of reliability data that the CPUC uses to measure reliability, each with their own reporting purposes and differing features. Second, we aim to improve the overall picture of reliability. We hope to do this by consolidating and collecting additional data on outages and emergency events to have a more complete understanding of the trends and features of outages and the scope of their impact. We also hope to gain a more complete understanding of how improvement projects are progressing, areas in need of improvement, and project successes. And lastly, we aim to better understand the impact of outage events on customers specifically. With more detailed and complete data, we will be able to better understand the scope of the impact of various disasters and emergency events and how they affect customers from varying communities with differing needs. Next slide, please. In this workshop, we hope to generate a discussion and to develop collaborative solutions for addressing the current challenges in reliability data maintenance and reporting. The options we suggest today are a starting point for this collaboration. We would like the outcome of this proceeding to be a feasible and reasonable enhancement developed through this cross-collaboration between CPUC and IOUs. To achieve the outcomes I mentioned in the previous slide, we're suggesting a data governance protocol as the principal framework to set standards and rules for all data sharing processes. We're suggesting a data dictionary to standardize and define all reliability data shared in these processes. We're suggesting a reporting schema or data reporting schema to establish a blueprint or a plan organizing the data processes to create a method for efficient and secure data sharing between IOUs and CPUC. In order to implement this plan set out in the data reporting schema, we are suggesting the following options as potential data transfer processes. These include a database that would serve to house and maintain data, a secure file transfer process that would serve to directly receive and transfer data between IOUs and the CPUC, or updates to existing reliability reporting requirements to better align with enhancing reliability measurement needs. Next slide, please. First and foremost, it's important that I introduce and define the concept of a data governance protocol. This is a data management industry standard approach to organizing a data sharing process. Its purpose is in its name. It serves to govern the use, organization, and management of data. For the CPUC, this will help to standardize and optimize the data shared between CPUC and IOUs. Think of it like city planning. The data are the cars and buildings, while the data governance protocol would be the building zoning laws, traffic laws, or other regulations to organize and protect the city. Better, more efficient management of data will lead to better analyses that could help drive and inform future initiatives. Next slide, please. Next, it's important for me to define the purpose of a data dictionary. It is a collection of standardized terms and definitions that organize data. It's an important component of an effective data governance protocol. This can serve as a glossary or reference point for data and information as it pertains to reliability. For the CPUC, the data dictionary would result from cross-collaboration with IOUs. It would standardize data across all reliability information, including reports currently provided by IOUs, and potentially identify and develop new needed data fields. A data dictionary would prevent loss of data fidelity and inconsistencies. This is a framework that could be applied across reliability reports, secure data transfers, or any database structure created in the future. A review of existing reliability data will inform how data are categorized and standardized. Next slide, please. Next, we have the data reporting schema. The data reporting schema is a data management plan or blueprint that outlines the process for sharing and maintaining reliability information. It also aligns with the standards set in the Data Governance Protocol. The data included in the reporting schema is already submitted through various reliability reports. This process would be aligned and standardized to the data governance policy and the data dictionary, creating a planning framework for efficient transfer of data. The data reporting schema can be applied across all data transfer processes, like database, a secure file transfer, or a data sharing or other data sharing frameworks. The data reporting schema can outline and define roles surrounding the use of the information as well. The roles could include a database modeler or a data modeler or schema designer that designs the overall organization of the data reporting schema and decides what information should be included and how information can be correlated throughout the schema. An administrator role that maintains the data reporting schema itself. They would not design the structure, but support the application of data governance policies and access controls to the schema. And users who are granted access to information within the data schema with differing levels of access based on their roles and responsibility, or depending on security requirements and needed use cases. Ultimately, the information used in this schema, including definitions for data characteristics, field names, data types, formats, and allowable values, can all be clearly defined using this framework. IOUs would not have to change their data collection or management standards, but information that would be housed within this data schema or aligned with this data schema will be cross-aligned with the data dictionary and the data governance protocol across all information submitted to the CPUC. In the previous slide, I used the analogy of a city planning to describe the way a data governance protocol works as a series of policies that organize and regulate. In the same analogy, a data schema would serve as the overall map of a city, including the streets and blocks that buildings are built on and that cars drive on. At this time, the data schema would not replace existing reliability reporting, but it could enhance the ability to measure reliability outside of the current reporting framework set requirements and metrics. Next slide, please. The first option we are posing for this data transfer process is a database. A database would provide a secure and encrypted framework that allows for more seamless sharing of data between IOUs and CPUC. Reliability data could be submitted through this process on a routine schedule, bridging gaps in data availability. The information that would be submitted using a database process is already provided through various sources, from data requests to reliability reporting, but would provide the versatility of data updates and refreshes as data standards change or corrections are made to information. Using this process, we would be able to refresh information without needing to share an entirely new dataset. Data in this process can be organized into tables that fit informational categories that could relate to each other using key identifiers. This would provide the ability to make relational inferences based on data that may not have been identified using the current reliability reporting metrics or requirements. I'll give more examples of the relations that can be made using this table structure later, but for now, this is just serving to show how we could apply this organization to reliability data. This organization could also be applied to other data transfer processes as well, but it serves as a good starting point for developing categorization to more readily access and reference reliability information. And lastly, to address security concerns, the database would feature the ability to set differing levels of accessibility to information for specific use cases and roles. Next slide, please. Other options for data transfer processes are a secure file transfer process or updating existing reliability report requirements. A secure file transfer process is a secure transfer of data directly from IOUs to CPUC. This is a process that is actually currently in place, but through this proceeding, we would standardize data submitted to align with the data governance protocol and the data dictionary. This would allow for data formatting to be aligned across information transferred so that they could be more readily correlated and used for analyses. Another process we recommend to address the challenges posed by differing reporting timings, formattings, or gaps in data would be to update existing reliability report requirements. The updates to these existing reliability report requirement streams would include determining updates to times of submission and aligning data across reports to the data governance protocol and dictionary. Through the collaboration among CPUC and IOUs, we hope to develop these recommendations into a solution that can enhance reliability data sharing. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, tables serve an important function in a data management structure since they organize the information into applicable categories. We have identified some themes and commonalities among the existing reliability reports that could be put into categories or tables. While I initially mentioned these categories or tables in relation to a database process, they can also be applied to any of the processes we introduced today as they merely serve to help organize information. The table categories we suggest include a meter level reporting table, which could provide meter related characteristics, such as if they are residential or a commercial client, among other features. An outage reporting table that could provide outage related information pertaining to locations of outages, duration, cause, and other features. And finally, an infrastructure reporting table that could provide data related to infrastructure maintenance events and hardening efforts. This table structure serves as a way to organize information, and it can be to organize information so that it can be correlated and analyzed more efficiently. I'll discuss in more detail the more granular organization for each of these tables later in this presentation. Next slide, please. Before I go into detail on the organization of the tables we suggest, I want to show the types of connections we can make using the data management structure. To the left are 3 example tables. This is not an exact depiction of what information in these tables would look like, but it's an example just to help with explaining their basic function and the types of connections you can make between the information they contain. First, you have a meter table. For every table, you need a unique non-repeating value that is the table is organized on. And in this table, the organizing value would be the meter ID. This table represents client-related information like zip code if they are a residential or commercial client, or corresponding circuit ID that represents the circuit they are on. Circuit ID could be used as an identifier value that repeats across each and every table listed to the left, since each of these records relate to a circuit. This circuit ID would relate directly to the outage table or the infrastructure table. The outage table would have related variables like outage type, cause, duration, or various features like that. The infrastructure table would have variables like dates of maintenance, zip codes that they're located in, and various features like that. Since each table has a circuit ID, they can be related to each other and build a relational inference, which means basically insights into how they connect. This would allow us to observe narratives like the example listed to the right. The words in bold blue represent the corresponding variable in the table that relates to the narrative, so you can see how these narratives could be pieced together using the variables in these tables. The example I have created is a notional example, and that's just to say this is not based on any real calculations, numbers, or variables. If I'm trying to make an insight into one selected circuit, I could say, customers at this circuit experienced 50 unplanned outages between January 2023 to January 2024. 60 of these customers were commercial or small business clients. The circuit is a part of an infrastructure project group that has hardening efforts scheduled to occur July 2025. It was last maintained in April 2024. As you can see, we can create connections using the information available and depict trends or occurrences that may not have been previously captured in the existing reliability reporting metrics and requirements. Next slide, please. Now, briefly getting back into the organization of these tables or categories, we have first the meter level reporting table. This table would be organized by a unique meter ID and include data surrounding client characteristics such as residential or commercial status and other important features that while summarized in reliability reporting are not available deaggregated. A table like this could be linked to other outage information or infrastructure table information to answer questions like those listed below. I'm not going to go into each question, but basically it would provide insight into the experience of different communities, critical infrastructure, or small businesses with gaps in services or other features. We understand that there may be limitations in providing meter level details. While having data at meter level would provide versatility and scalability of analysis and prevent loss of analytical precision, we want to address any limitations this may present and are open to collaborating on a reasonable and feasible level of information provided. Next slide, please. Now we'll look at the potential organization of an outage reporting table. This would be organized by a unique outage ID. It would include data surrounding all outages, including planned and unplanned. It would include current reliability reporting information on outages that is found in the WMPQDR, the PSPS reports, or the EPSS reports. Outages could be aligned to the guidelines set in the IEEE standards as well for outage reporting. A table like this could be linked to other table topics to answer questions like those listed below. Once again, providing insight into the experiences of different communities and relations to other table themes surrounding different characteristics. Next slide, please. Finally, this is more detail on the organization of a potential infrastructure reporting table. This table would be organized by a unique infrastructure ID. It would include data surrounding all pieces of infrastructure, like characteristics including location, types of infrastructure, records for grid hardening efforts, maintenance efforts made on the infrastructure. A table like this could be linked once again to the other tables to create insights and provide us a bigger picture of reliability, providing us with more versatility. Next slide, please. Once again, I want to provide a summary of the frameworks and options we are suggesting today. These include a data governance protocol to set standards and rules for all data sharing processes, a data dictionary to standardize and define all reliability data shared in these processes, a data reporting schema to establish a blueprint or a plan for organizing the data processes into, or to create a method for efficiently and securely sharing data. And in order to implement in order to implement this schema, we are suggesting the following data transferring sharing processes outlined. That includes a database that could house data and maintain data, a secure file transfer process that would allow us to directly receive data, or updating existing reliability reporting requirements to better align with enhancing reliability measurement needs. This concludes my introduction of these options and frameworks for addressing the aims of this proceeding. There will be a few opportunities for questions, reactions, and comments to these topics, but before jumping into that, I want to just pass things back to my program manager, Jim Cho, to share a couple important words before we progress. Jim?
Well, Brittany, we should just ask the group if there are any questions about some of the items that you brought up, some of the topics.
Yes. So yeah, we can open the floor to any questions, and feel free to come off mute, raise your hand, or drop them in the chat. I see we have a few in the chat already. First, Stephen Moss, it looks like you had a few questions on the presentation. Can the database be open source, at least in part, to enable stakeholders to query data and to add information to the database, such as local government or small business resiliency investments? What data elements require confidential shields? Can the infrastructure category include utility reliability investments planned and executed with transparent tracking of resulting or anticipated changes in reliability metrics? That's a fantastic question. And I'll leave it open for a second if anybody feels I can address this, or if somebody feels they are more readily available to address it, feel free to come off mute.
Why don't you get started, Brittany, and if there's anything else, we can jump in and add.
Okay. So to your first question, can the database be open source? At this time, we are not recommending an open source data process. We basically want to keep it encrypted, secured for the sake of client security, privacy issues. So we would like the database to only be available to CPUC personnel. And then, as stated before, this would have differing levels of availability with differing access to information. We just don't want to open it up at this time. That would be the ideal process. As far as that would pertain to the database. As far as the secure file transfer, this would be an end-to-end just transferring of data sets, things like Excel documents, ArcGIS documents, things like that. So that would be also closed. And the updates would be a longer form process. And as for what data, let's see.
Well, I think, Brittany, just to jump on what you said,
Mhm.
while we're concerned about confidentiality, especially as we're kind of pitching this idea of a more to harken back to what Commissioner Baker spoke about in the beginning, the purpose of this would be to be able to communicate out more information to ratepayers. I think that the latter part of the question about the infrastructure category, including utility reliability investments, that's exactly in line with where we're trying to go, right? So that we have the ability to communicate with customers not only on what their current reliability picture is, but what their reliability picture will look like in the future if there's planned improvements. So all of the things that you're asking about are things that we're considering. We have kind of put this stake around privacy because we are asking for this more granular data. But I think that certainly that's something that we're open to discussing today as well.
Yes. And I think touching on the questions about integrating, including utility reliability investments, sharing, I think you said adding information to the database or to this process. As Audrey pointed out, this is an ongoing process, so we this is why we're meeting today, to answer those questions, to figure out a most feasible, reasonable plan for implementation. Okay, Jen Kaminsky says, for the database option, would that be something the CPUC would be responsible to build and maintain? Another great question. I see, Audrey, you've come up.
Yes, I just wanted to answer this specifically because I think we've been talking about this for the CPUC to build and maintain a database. That's going to take time. So as we talk about this kind of process of data maturing with database data maturity, that would ultimately be potentially a end goal, but that's not something that's going to happen within this year, most likely, as we all know that how government works. So I think that we're trying to figure out how to do something quickly and reasonably with the eyes on an eventual database structure that potentially CPUC could house. So that's internally what we've been discussing, understanding the limitations of doing that right away for CPUC.
Great, thank you.
Brittany, we also have a hand up from Ian Fisher. Ian, please feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Thanks, Richard. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent, great. Okay, so I did have a similar question about the database maintenance, but I'll leave that one aside. The thing I want clarifying, and just to understand, so you're proposing say a database that will be very granular, and then there's the existing reporting. What is the vision? Are we saying that they're going to run in parallel, or are you hoping that ultimately the existing reporting will emerge and be written from the database so that it's like an emergent product of the database? I'm just trying to work out whether we're going to end up with parallel reporting processes here, or whether we're going to end up with a single flow of information.
We've talked about this a lot. And obviously we can't speak for other reporting that happens at the commission because those are come out of decisions that we're not directly impacting today. What we do think will happen as we get this data more regularly, that it'll at least reduce the burden of ad hoc requests that go out, which is significant. So hopefully we're getting regular reporting. We're not going to be having these ad hoc back and forth all the time. I think that being said, as we see this process and how it works, that hopefully we would be able to handle some redundancies that are going on, with reports. But the reports have analysis attached to them. Like if you look at the reliability reporting, that has analysis that's attached to it that you can't get just from querying a database. So it's something that we've talked about, but again, that's not all within our purview as well. So.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question. I see Stephen Moss has made a question in the comments. Local government experience obtaining essential data that's deemed confidential has been quite poor. It would be disappointing if this hurdle was erected as we attempt to secure more transparency. That's a good comment. Yes. And I see you also followed that up with, likewise with two-way data flow, a large portion of the reliability puzzle will be missing in the form of resiliency facilities and backup generators. It's a great.
So Brittany, I'll just jump in on this one. And I think, one of the things is the data is going to be reported into the CPUC. That doesn't necessarily mean that data cannot be shared. I think one of the things that we're not going to do is we're not going to allow the public to have access to that raw data stream. I think, and so I think there's analysis that needs to be done. There's things like that. So that doesn't mean that local governments or government units that have an interest in getting a better understanding of that data or access to the data in some form or fashion I think that would be worked out within the process. I think that's a great question to bring up. I think there's aspects of that could get worked out throughout the in later today when we have the big robust discussion. So, Stephen, thank you for bringing that up. We'll make that a note to maybe make that topic to discuss, as well as other items. I guess the question is, are there any other questions left? Okay, so I know that this was a great warm up for later today, because I think later today we're going to definitely talk about sort of what this stuff, all this is going to look like. So I appreciate everybody early on, just kind of breaking the ice, getting the conversation flowing. And I think right now we're going to have a bunch of presentations from the IOUs following this. But I think one of the things or we're going to take a break and then have the IOUs give a presentation. And then I think the one thing I really do ask, and we'll re-emphasize this, we want to figure out what is feasible, what's reasonable. Brittany put together what we need to do, right? What are the topics of conversation? But in that area of how we do this is going to be very important later this afternoon. And so we are looking for as much feedback as we can possibly get later this afternoon. So back to you, Brittany.
Thank you. Yes, there will be a discussion later after the break, after the IOUs presentations. And as Jim said, this is a fantastic jumping point to have these conversations. So thank you very much. That has been me. Richard, can you progress to the next slide? We addressed questions, but this is my contact information if you feel you have any other questions offline. Thank you very much. I will pass this back to Richard to progress the workshop. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. So then we'll go on a break, and we shall return at 2:20 p.m. So I will see everybody at 2:20 p.m. Thank you very much, and see everybody soon. Stuart, I see that you've raised your hand.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Just really quick, if when our speaker is ready to speak, or speakers, they just need to come off mute, right? And they can begin presenting after you introduce them, of course.
Yeah, so
Just want to make sure all they need to do is unmute themselves when they're presenting.
all right, we're at 2:20 right now, and welcome back, everybody. I hope everybody had a chance to freshen up a little bit and take a little bit of break. And we're ready to move on to the next segment of our workshop, which is the presentations from the IOUs on the reliability database environments. And first in that series of presentations is PG&E.
Thanks, Richard.
And,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. This is John Eric Tallman. I'm the lead for the System Performance, Reliability, and Resiliency Strategy team. And I want to walk you through some of our thoughts and ideas on what's been proposed. We really appreciate the opportunity to participate in having this forum. Could you go to the next slide? All right. We feel like this proceeding is timely as we are taking a strong look at the accuracy and timely reporting of our customer outage data, both internally and externally. We strongly believe that the integrity of the data is everything about really impacting the metrics and how they impact our customers. So we're taking a multi-year holistic improvement. We have a multi-year holistic improvement plan, looking at our reliability metrics, the accuracy, the reporting, the underlying data, how it's collected. There's some background noise. Can you guys still hear me?
Up there, John.
All right, thank you. So just real quick on that, just to share where we are in our journey, the key objectives we have is improving the data accuracy and the reporting, enhancing our systems and processes that are more automated, and our QC processes, so that we better assure that we're in compliance, and we're looking at ways to continuously improve how we collect, curate, use, and analyze our reliability data. We feel some strong alignment with the opportunities here. We believe that there's definitely benefits to standardization, and while at the same time, the same pressures that we feel internally to try to make sure that our standardization efforts are balanced with the cost, so that we're providing the optimal value for our customers at the end of the day. With that in mind, we are taking an approach where we're looking to modify existing reports, and before we go and create whole new systems and processes internally. And I feel like we would recommend the same in this, cross IOU with regulator and regulator-led initiative. So that's my intro. Could we go to the next slide? I want to touch base on some of our recommendations. Primarily, we feel that in line with Commissioner Baker's opening remarks, looking to make immediate impact on some of the pressure points that everyone's feeling, that we should look to modify existing reports and consider that first and see what mileage we can get out of that approach. Acknowledging the fact that if we're modifying existing reports, we're probably addressing the root cause of this, which is the commonality across all those reports. So there's a standardized approach to the data structure. And I thought the intro on kind of grounding everybody on data and data structures and schemes was really good. I can speak from experience, and Melissa Boyd, who's here helping me also, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Undergoing a whole new database approach to something without having your schema set is going to be a fraught approach. So we would recommend focusing on modifying existing reports and processes before we go off and create a new database. That can be, even with that in mind, standardizing definitions and data is really where where we got to roll up our sleeves, and that can be a lengthy process. But I think if everyone's got a common view, objectives like we're saying here, that's a possibility. That's something that's worth our time. But those benefits of standardization can be had without building a new database and processes. The other thing I want to highlight is the dynamics of keying our data off of the meter to circuit relationship, as meters can be fed from different circuits, depending on what's going on the system operationally, with switching or work that's going on that might prompt the switching. So I think that's an area for us to bring our heads together and see what we can do about, because that example that was shared is really important, that you do need a common key across the data so that we can work back and forth. But the meter to circuit is one that maybe isn't as well grounded as and constant as we would want for that purpose. So just as we look at the affordability of the different modifications that are on the table to reach these objectives, I think we need to make sure we look at that we have the right resources. Excuse me. Okay. What kind of data governance, and in line with what was presented on data schemes, and how does that tie in with our QA/QC processes? If we are looking at new systems, how are they integrated? And just a really tight look at, if we're making a modification, what's the value add as opposed to the cost? And I think we can get to a much better approach to this. Can we go to the next slide? All right. As we look beyond, what's here, we're looking even long term. And I know it was mentioned earlier, so I want to touch on that we think that striving to align with some of the industry best practices really positions the state of California and all the utilities really well. And I think we should look to partnership with groups like the IEEE. They've got a reliability and resiliency working group right now that's looking to try to establish what are the industry best practices on data and schema and metrics. So it'd be great if we could, to the extent we could align with that. Of course, application of that, as we come back to our own utilities, we have to look at that and how well does that work? And again, what's the cost to value of full implementation of that? But I think as a guidance, we should try to align to that. I want to pause here. I know that my colleague, Melissa Boyd, maybe had some comments on this she wanted to add.
Thank you, John, Eric. Just confirming people can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you, Melissa.
Thank you for that confirmation. All right, so just to get maybe a little bit more specific recommendation, when we talk about already existing reporting, some of the pain points that we heard were timing, standard definition, area, and then we feel that all of that does not get fixed by adding maybe a new database, because we still have those existing reports, different definitions and different timing associated with that. But when I had seen what the CPUC was really looking for with the meter level reporting, outages, and infrastructure, one of the reports that came to mind is the spatial quarterly data report that does already have customer meter with the same largely being sought, including meter ID, meter type, location, and circuit ID. That be the same for outages. You already have outages where it has the cause, the location, and time. And then that third component, infrastructure, we do have all of our W initiatives wrapped up as quarterly spatial report as well. Have linkage to circuit ID, if that was one of those linkage, again, that was of interest to this, although we would, as John mentioned, like to see in our partners to provide or to find maybe a web of linking, since our circuit is dynamic and we have switched in different configurations. the space quarterly data often evolve. We version of it annually, and the versions are always meant to make enhancements that support understanding the UT's data. So some minor tweaks that might be helpful to the customer would be to include an attribute count year-to-date outages. Likewise, for our outage data set, maybe expanding that to outages, planned or unplanned, with an attribute indicating whether it was planned or unplanned. Adjustments that be able to help get the CPU's additional data that would help this all together. And then in alignment with that, let's work on those best practices for creating those definitions that we can standardize the existing reports around, as well as those need to be looked at as well. And that, John, Eric, that is all that I have.
Hey, thanks, Melissa. I think there's maybe one more page. Nope, that's it. Thanks for the opportunity to share our position on that. We look forward to the conversation.
And next, we will have Southern California Edison presenting.
Great, thank you, Richard. Can everyone hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great, thank you very much. Hi, good afternoon. My name is John Wu. I'm the Senior Manager for the System Performance Team, and I'll be presenting Southern California Edison's, I guess, slides for this workshop. So if you can move to the next one. So I'd like to start off by saying SCE definitely appreciates the opportunity to provide feedback on this proposal. From our initial observations of the data governance protocol, SCE does support reasonable and meaningful enhancements to reliability data reporting. Although we do want to notify or identify some areas where we do have some concerns and also want to identify some recommendations. We've kind of summarized some of those points here, but as was kind of identified from the track one areas for siloed information, I think there are definitely opportunities to leverage or align data across different reliability reports that are provided, and kind of highlights, or we've discussed some of them already about QDR, PSPS, and reliability reports. And each of these have different requirements or different proceedings and are managed by different regulatory agencies. So some collaboration across those areas would be helpful. Also, when we talk about some of the standardization, I think there are some opportunities for standardization for IEEE category level information. But I think there needs to be more discussion in regards to feasibility, operational impacts, and the value of adopting some of the subcategory guidelines within IEEE and what it would take to implement some of those changes. And then lastly, overall, in terms of modifying existing systems, changing processes, and even the affordability resources and the investments that would need to be made to implement some of this framework, I think we have some ideas or recommendations on how we could take an incremental approach to implementing some of this in order to seek the most efficient and cost beneficial ways of improving and implementing some of these recommendations. So next slide. So in regards to near-term efforts, I think there's opportunities for us to evaluate our existing annual electric reliability report and see where can we gain the most benefit from making incremental changes in terms of prioritizing the type of data that we're looking to gain and including them within our existing reporting structure. That allows us to kind of see, where are we prioritizing or focusing areas that we want to evaluate for reliability improvement, including some of the focus areas that were identified earlier. And then how can we, number one, prioritize those top issues and then augment the existing reliability report? Can we develop methods to incorporate or data share across the utilities and across the different regulatory bodies that are seeking the information? And then also assessing a contemplated data submission, whether or not that's beneficial across all the other reports and filings that we have. And then shifting into mid and long-term focus, we could look at the granularity and timing of the reliability reporting that's provided, and then working through or establishing the working group to evaluate more complex issues in terms of the proposal. That's in regards to the IEEE subcategories, incorporating infrastructure data, and also how do we address some of the confidentiality issues that come up with the level of granularity of the data that's being shared. Next slide. So I'll go through each of the kind of different levels of the reporting tables that were suggested. And so starting at the meter level, I think we're identifying some of the challenges or concerns initially with providing this level of granularity. Some of the information such as CPUC 1515 rule, some of the connectivity issues in regards to, it's not connectivity of the meter to the customers, but more along the lines of connectivity of our infrastructure and how it rolls up into the circuit level. And then there's privacy concerns for customer information, and then also just the amount of data that's available at the meter level, and how do we transfer that amount of data into the system that's being defined here. And so from a recommendation perspective, we're looking at consolidating at a circuit level, where we would be including the average number of circuits for the year, including delineations of medical baseline information, residential versus customer, commercial, and other information like that that would be done at the circuit level rather than at the meter level. Next slide. When we shift to outage reporting table, I think there are still some concerns about location for outages, since there are some instances where outages can span multiple cities, and so then how do you assign that to specific locations when you're talking about outages? And then I've already talked a little bit about standardization efforts. I think there's significant effort that would go into standardizing at IEEE subcategory level. For instance, one example is where some of the guidelines kind of identify, degradation of equipment as a subcategory of failure for some of our equipment failures. And so it's tough to discern whether or not it's degradation of a piece of equipment or some other type of failure without doing detailed root cause investigation. And so at what level do we implement, hundreds of root cause investigations into different types of equipment failure, or is there a guideline or standard for when you actually initiate a root cause? Not to mention the time frame required for validation of this information and the back and forth, confirmation that that's the true cause of an outage. And so that's one example that we're pointing to for the difficulty of implementing some of the standardization. So when we look at the recommendation, really we're pointing towards district or substation level location specific circuits, and then also being able to align at a category level for the IEEE and not necessarily the subcategory level. Lastly, if we go to the next slide, we'll talk about infrastructure level reporting table. Definitely some challenges or more challenges and concerns on this side. I think there are some security risks that we need to consider in regards to geolocation, the structure type, and the types of maintenance or mitigations that we might be implementing on the system. I think it opens up for some potential risks with that information being available. And we also have to have some consideration for the CEII information or other security data that could be provided as part of this. And we have to evaluate whether or not there's opportunities to either flag this information or just protect it from being released. Definitely more discussion is needed in order to understand the scope and feasibility, costs and impacts associated with incorporating this infrastructure related data into the reliability reporting. It's not always a one-to-one match between mitigations that are being implemented and the reliability benefits expected to be realized from the mitigations, and also fully understanding whether or not they are, reliability driven mitigations or those, collateral benefits from doing these mitigations. And then lastly, I think in the past we've seen some examples where developing infrastructure in order to develop something such as the QDR took years to build, lots of back and forth conversation, and significant investment on the utility side in order to implement and develop some of these processes. So just want to highlight some of the challenges associated with developing net new criteria, and a database will take some time and some effort on the side of the utilities in order to achieve what we're looking for. We go to the last slide. Just want to kind of highlight some examples of information that we do have available at the utility level, which could kind of highlight the areas that we're talking about in terms of concerns or granularity of data that we're looking to see. As you can see on the top left, we have some of the different categories of failures or outages that we already report at or have available, and kind of contributions over the years and comparisons across the years. On the top right, we have some of our reliability metrics broken out by month, and I think this is at a circuit level. So we have circuit level SAIDI information, and you can see whether or not the performance is increasing or decreasing against various years that you're comparing to. And then lastly, the tabular format that we have at the bottom really highlights the level of detail that we have that we try to capture, and the different types of information. And this also points to some of the common identifiers that we could use across the different tables in order to help link some of the information if possible. And then lastly, really wanted to highlight that our outages do go through a validation process. And so the granularity or the time frame in which we deliver some of these metrics or these reliability information does take some time, because validation does happen. And so near real time would be very difficult for us to implement. So with that, that's the end of the slides for SCE. Want to open up and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, so it looks like we have a comment from Stephen Moss. Unless stakeholders can match circuit level outage data with circuit level infrastructure investment data, they will not be able to effectively examine cost effectiveness and determine whether DER alternatives are more apt. These data also needed to be matched with local non-utility resiliency assets. Thank you, Stephen, for your comment. John, do you have any comments about that?
Difficult to say. I'm not quite the expert on cost effectiveness and DER alternatives. I have general knowledge on the DNA DDoR or GNA DDoR process in terms of seeking DER alternatives for some of our mitigations, but I don't know that they apply wholesale across reliability-driven improvements too.
Go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian Fisher, Public Advocate's Office. So this is more of an observation than a question of the two presentations I've heard so far. Neither presentation has addressed a substantial part of the scope of the rulemaking, which is about understanding the individual customer's experience and the ability to understand how well you're notifying the customer of the outage situation, whether it's a PSPS or an unplanned outage. All we've talked about so far is modifying existing systems to satisfy existing indices and metrics, all of which are derived from the actions that the utility take. We're still talking about aggregation. We're still talking about averages. We're not talking about the actual experience of the customer and how we record this experience of the customer and memorialize that so we can analyze it. I just want to get that stated now. We can discuss why the practicality of that kind of later on in the open session, but I'm not hearing anything about the customer's experience or the notification systems you have and how we actually understand the effectiveness of your notification systems. And John, that's not specific to you. Well, it's actually to you and John Eric, but this is all to all the utilities at this point in time. So if we can start addressing the actual scope of the rulemaking, the full scope of the rulemaking, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe not to directly address the concern that you're raising, And it's not quite in the presentation that I have, but I think when we talk about prioritization of the metrics that we're seeking to improve in order to address some of the concerns that you're specifically talking about the customer level granularity, there are existing metrics, I think, that would be able to address customer experience. And so if there's an opportunity for us to prioritize, those metrics into a reliability report, I think that's where we would want to focus our efforts to, in the short term, augment our existing reliability reports.
That identify the individual customer's experience, not just the customer's experience, but the customer experience of an individual customer, because that's kind of where we're trying to get at here.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
I also see a hand up from Shiwit from STG&E. I apologize if I mispronounced that, but feel free to come to unmute yourself and comment.
Yeah, no worries, Richard. Thank you. I just wanted to address Ian's comment. We all agree with that, but I don't think the focus of this workshop is that. And STG&E, is presenting next, and we don't have the right folks to address the concerns you raised, Ian. And the focus would just be on, the data reliability metrics and all that. But in a future workshop, more than happy to discuss those topics you mentioned.
Okay, any other comments or questions for Edison? Seeing none at this moment, so we'll go ahead and move on to San Diego Gas and Electric, STG&E. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lawrence Obsede. Thank you very much for having us today. I'm the manager of distribution technology and asset strategy. And today I'm joined by my colleague, Momita Clifton, representing our wildfire mitigation program. Next slide, please. So today we'd like to discuss what our current reports look like, the challenges we might have with data sharing. We have a few examples to also showcase the current systems that we have in place. And first of all, I'd like to share that we do have existing data reports that are shared today. They include our quarterly data report, the annual electric reliability report, and for our public safety power shutoff, we do provide a post-season and a post-event report. Similar to our colleagues at the IOUs, we do have a concern with standardization of data elements to make sure we are addressing exactly what the CPUC is most interested in. And we'd like to identify what those gaps are that exist between the quarterly data report and what else we can share to meet those needs. Similar to the IOUs as well, the timing involved with providing this data is ensuring that it's been properly audited and verified and trued up. So sharing this data in real time will be difficult. In addition to the manual process involved with providing infrastructure updates, which is a heavy lift, just to meet the quarterly data report requirements, but to do it more frequently than that would be a heavy lift for us. There was some mention about affordability. We share the same concerns with implementing this new data schema and a governance system, especially if we have to change the frequency, because it will require additional auditing and QA/QC. And we're concerned that we might not have the resources to meet those needs. So today our recommendations are to supplement the annual report. And to make upgrades to the annual report, for instance, including the customer experience metrics like CME and CLID for multiple interruptions or for long duration interruptions. And then obviously aligning the content with the current wildfire mitigation quarterly data report. Next slide, please. Some of the examples that we get today that are provided to our employees and the data that's shared externally include our for every outage an event type, whether it be planned or unplanned. We have the ability to drill down the customer types, and we wanted to give you an example of what that might look like. So if we were to drill down on a specific outage, which is the top screenshot, we can drill down on the actual customers by looking how many customers are affected. And then on the next slide, please, we can identify what type of customers we have: customer, industrial, residential, whether they're sensitive, life support, medical baseline, etc. And all that data is available to us. However, there is some cleanup involved to redact customer information, which is what we showed here. That is something that would be laborious to do and would take some extra time to make sure that customer privacy is highlighted. But this data is readily available now and can be provided once it's been audited and QA/QC'd. Next slide, please. And Momita, I'd like you to take control. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Momita Clifton, and I'm a project manager on the Wildfire Mitigation Data Strategy team at SDG&E. And today I'll be walking you through how we manage and share our GIS data to support wildfire mitigation and meet the regulatory requirements. So SDG&E, as you know, like the other utilities, we submit to OEIS the spatial geodatabase quarterly as a part of the WMP requirements. Now, this comprehensive data set includes data, it's updated event-based data, and it's always adherence to the OEIS standards, and the version 4.01 being the most recent right now. Now, the database covers a wide range of wildfire mitigation related layers, such as assets, lines, endpoints, PSPS, risk events, inspections, grid hardening, vegetation management. Then we have SDG&E initiative, and then we also have external data sets like the HFTD, AFN, census boundaries, etc. Now, when possible, the data creation has been automated, as you can see marked in green. Those are our automated data creation process right now, whereas the other parts still remain manual, compile there, and then the ones that's not red or green, they're partially automated, partially manual, so we are still in the process of automating the process. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, as mentioned in the previous slide, for the OEIS requirement, SDG&E delivers the geodatabase quarterly. Now, this file is uploaded and shared through the SharePoint, meeting the regulatory expectations. While the geodatabase format is required, SDG&E also has the capability to publish map services from the geodatabases to ArcGIS Hub and the ArcGIS Online AGOL. Now, these platforms allow for more interactive and user-friendly data access. Now, in 2024, SDG&E tested a downloadable ArcGIS Hub page where the users can easily view and download individual OEIS data layers. Now, this enhances the transparency and the self-service access for the geospatial data, which might come in handy, but it definitely comes with a cost, right? So with the future funding, this platform could host a full geodatabase for download. Again, like I said, it's expensive, so it's a future plan. And then it also offers GIS in various formats, including PDFs, Excels, or dashboards for non-GIS users. And it also supports the lightweight web apps and visualization tools. Now, several example layers, as you can see in this slide, is provided. Example, we have transmission lines, substation details, support structure, now demonstrating the type of asset being shared through this platform. This approach reflects an ongoing effort to balance the compliance of OEIS and innovation of the data. But again, it's something that we are planning on. This was a pilot project, and we just tried it on with some of the data sets. And next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. We also in SDG&E, we leverage the ArcGIS Online and Hub platform to make the GIS data more accessible and transparent. This support compliance with the CPUC decision around the public data availability. So currently the GIS team, we have two portals, the microgrid portal, that shares the data with cities, counties, and the tribal government to support the microgrid resilience planning. Whereas we also have the public safety partner data share that offers public partners the PSPS related layers and the relevant wildfire mitigation data. Both of these can be accessed, but you have to go to this link provided and then you can request an access. But again, this is limited to CPUC guidelines, and who can access this data is limited due to confidentiality. And so this platform enables collaboration between SDG&E and the local agencies. It helps fulfill SDG&E's goal to improve community preparedness and response through timely and spatially accurate information. And as mentioned again, this, you can request access through that link, and it will bring you to a form where you have to put your name and details, and there's options. You can pick what you represent. If you're the government, if you're representing a city, if you're representing the military, you can, based on which portal you want to access, you can select that. Well, that being said, that's the wrap for my part. So these tools will help us being compliant and also coordinate with the partners. So I'll be happy to ask answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Give it a moment to see if anybody has questions for SDG&E. I don't see any at this moment. And again, I'd like to remind everybody that we'll also have an open questions and answers portion towards the end of the workshop, in case anybody thinks of any questions that they didn't think of previously. And I guess for now, we'll move on to our guided discussion portion, moderated by my colleague, Brittany Gaines. So take it away, Brittany.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, everyone. So I will be moderating the guided discussion on data management and reporting. We have some questions to guide the discussions, but this will be an open format, so we hope to just generate a natural flow of discussion. Can you go to the next slide, please? So just to summarize, these are our suggestions and options at a glance. To remind everyone, we have a data governance protocol, data dictionary, data reporting schema, the 3 data transfer processes we are suggesting, which include a database, secure file transfer process, and updates to existing reliability reports. So the questions will be pertaining to these options, and anybody can pop on, but I do want to just start this out with an open question to our IOU participants, and just get a capture of your reactions to this. Listening to the responses and the presentations, thank you so much for presenting today. It seems you have really digested some of these recommendations and have come up with concerns, a wonderful list of concerns and recommendations. So to start with, I would just like to open the floor, not get too far back into your presentations, but just open the floor and have each of you, if you can, provide us just with those 2 topics, just a quick summary of your reactions, your concern, and your recommendations forward. So I guess we'll start with, we'll start with the first presenter. Let's go with PG&E.
Hey, Brittany, this is Stuart Rubio
Melissa
from
Boyd.
PG&E. Oh, go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, I can thank you. Thank you, Stuart. I can, on behalf of John, Eric, and myself and PG&E. So our recommendation had the secure file transfer and updating existing liability reporting. The overall goals of looking for ways to align on common understanding with definitions and schemas. I would also love to take that into the reports as see where we can make them unified. Our data, we are also again supportive of the overall goals, but recognize that that is costly, will take a lot longer to build out, and does not fix the problems necessarily of the other reports with the timing or misalignment in definitions. Great. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you. Okay, great feedback. Thank you so much. And just so that we can get to the next group, next, can we have someone from Southern California Edison speak on just a brief summary of your presentation, of your reactions, concerns, and recommendations?
Absolutely. Thank you, Brittany. From the SCE side, I think overall we're supportive of the data governance protocol that you're defining on the slide. I think we've, in our slides, we identified some concerns about confidentiality and some of the security concerns that we have with sharing certain granularity of data. And then from a recommendations perspective, I think maybe on the bottom of the slide, working from the right to the left, we're updating or incrementally augmenting our existing reliability reports to seek efficiency and benefits on collaboration across the agencies and existing reports that are provided. I think we can build upon that and get to our eventual goal of implementing the overarching data management and database that you're defining here.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And next, could we please have a representative from SDG&E, speak on your reaction, just a brief summary, like those that went before, a reaction, concerns, and recommendations.
Yes, thank you very much, Brittany. Share the same reactions. We're pleased that we can be a part of this. We definitely appreciate the fact that we have a data governance program already in place for our quarterly data report, and like to leverage a lot of lessons learned there. Our concerns, obviously, are ensuring that we have all of our data elements and definitions in place and that they're standardized for this effort. Obviously, concerns with the timing and to do our auditing and QA/QC, ensuring that we have enough time to manage all of our manual processes that exist today, or create systems that can automate them in the future. And then, for our recommendations, looking to upgrade, supplement the existing annual report with additional metrics, and ensuring that all the data is audited and timely for this effort, and aligning the cadence and the content with the annual report and also with the quarterly data report. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's great. Thank you so much. Yes, we really appreciate the feedback and the reactions, the concerns, and the recommendations you all have shared. They've really helped form a basis for the process of this proceeding. So I'll open this up to some more questions. I'll just touch on, well, first, I want to open up the floor to any questions my colleagues might want to address or any feedback.
Yeah, Brittany, thanks. Just want to. I think this is more of a base level question. I think maybe it would help a little bit to build our own understanding of how these particular requirements I think can be tuned to sort of current capabilities. So I think my question goes back to sort of base level question is how exactly is reliability measured? Like those individual outages within the databases, how does each utility sort of measure and understand what an outage is, and then how is that information aggregated back up into the requirements that the annual reports provide, be it the SAIDI scores for a division or territory and the like.
Is your question what metrics we use, or is your question at what level we report it? I heard references to both in your question.
Sorry if that wasn't clear. I think my question is how exactly is the sort of base how are the base numbers collected that go up into those metrics, i.e. how is the customer number or the number of customers for each outage recorded or found out? How is the duration of their outage found out? And then obviously that's the data that goes into building the the SAIDI metrics at a higher level. But how does the utility measure those base level things that go into the metrics is my question.
I can take this first if that's okay. Lawrence Upstead with SDG&E. So our outages are recorded in our network management system, which is what we use for our outage management system, or OMS. And each event is stored and houses all of our on-site data, the call-out data for times. It has the duration of the event, through every stage of the event, including the first restoration, once the outage cause has been identified, and so forth. And all of that information is recorded in real time during an outage through the support of our operator, and some automated, steps, which might include, triggering of SCADA devices, last gas from AMI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of that is, sent to systems where we conduct our auditing. And, that could take days, sometimes months, depending on if there's a major event involved. And all that's used to support our metrics, or SAIDI, SAIFI, MEFI, CLED, CME, et cetera.
That's really helpful, and I think you answered my follow-up question too about whether this is talking to like AMI level, coordinated AMI level devices and SCADA devices as well. So that's really helpful. I'll leave the floor open to both Edison and PG&E if they'd like to respond as well.
I can respond. So Trang Wu from SoCal Edison. So on the same level as Lawrence, and the outages do get validated, and it does incorporate AMI. So there's a lot of information that goes in just to make sure that the outages are correct and the number of customers are also correct as well. So that's to ensure that the data quality is there. And then tying it back to the information that you saw on the last slide that we had of the circuit level. So that's the information that you have. So it gets aggregated together. And sure, you have one outages. There may be like one-off scenarios, so you can't just look at like an individual outage and just go with it. And so this is sort of where you're trying to assess to see how if there's any trends, any or any ongoing issues that you would have in the system by looking at that. And depending on what you're looking at, you have the SAIDI level, SAIFI level, whatever the different indices on, you can target it different ways because those are broken up on different purposes.
Thank you. And PG&E perhaps?
Yeah, this is John Eric. Our systems and processes are fairly similar to what was just described. We have an outage collection or an outage database that is the process that captures the process every day of the outages from first no light to restoration. The customers are correlated with an outage based upon the tracking that we have from customer meter to transformer to circuit. And then in a very similar manner, there's a QC process that goes through from the operator and then a secondary team that checks the outages and makes sure that they're recorded correctly, that they're in line with the steps that the troubleshooters and restorations teams have worked with. And then once that, from that database, then we pull that following IEEE 1366 guidelines on the definitions for customer counts, and to resulting in the metrics that we report when we're talking about reliability on the system. That can be looked at from the circuit level. You can look at customer minutes out from a customer perspective if you want to. I will say the more you get into the granularity, there might be some noise, and then as you come up higher, you can have more confidence in like the customer minutes on a circuit or the customer minutes in a region or an area or city. So.
Great, thank you all for those responses. I think my, you know, that particular line of questioning I wanted to sort of get at, you know, what is sort of the baseline, what is the base level of data that's available? And it sounds, you know, as a commonality, it sounds like there's, you know, data on these outages from both individual meter, be it from last gasp, from AMI, or from SCADA device activations and the like. So I think that helps. I think that maybe that helps set up the discussion a little bit better in terms of what data is available, and you know, and we can take that and sort of move it up into, you know, how could we potentially move towards a data reporting schema within this data. So thanks, Brittany.
Thank you, Julian. Great questions. I would like to also open the floor to some of our stakeholders, just to address your comment, Ian. We can open the floor to stakeholders. I kind of want to go one off just so that we can ask questions and, you know, in a organized manner. But go ahead. So any one of our stakeholders on the call, please feel free. Oh, and also I just want to highlight as well that just in case anyone was wondering, we have invited individuals who do work on current reliability reporting at CPUC to participate in this conversation also. So we just tried to hit the gambit of all party members to push this discussion. So anyone, stakeholder, go ahead and speak on, ask a question.
So, Brittany, I actually have my hand up, just so you know, so I'm not trying to jump in here, but it's Ian Fisher again. Just following on from Julian's question, do the utilities have a business process model and documentation of the actual process for outage, for including the collection of data, the QA/QC, and then the output? Is there some sort of place this is documented we could review it and just to better understand it? Well, this is to utilities.
Hey, Ian, this is John Eric. We have some documentation on how each of the steps and parts that I outlined, and we could look at how that could be used to communicate, give a clearer picture. If that's where you're going.
Yeah, I would really appreciate that, just to understand the amount of manual cleaning that's done here functionally in the data. It would be very good to identify what that looks like between what you're getting from the system versus what you're inputting into the actual indices.
Yeah, Ian, I will say that the level of detail may not be, it doesn't read like a military standard, you know, do this, turn to this level of torque.
Fair enough.
It outlines the steps and definitely the responsibilities and teams that are on point.
Yeah, but I mean, but anything would be better to give us outsiders a better view of actually what the process consists of would be really appreciated, frankly, to be honest.
maybe we should look to provide some kind of a high level picture or something. So.
At SDG&E, we have a coding document that for the folks that coded the outages, and and we also use that to validate the process. Since the actual documentation starts within our NMS with a system operator, and it goes to our coding process and then to our QA/QC. So we do have that, but that's what all we're using today.
I mean, again, appreciated the level of detail, is better than anything we have at this point in time. So just understanding your process will understand the lift, help understand the lift.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ian, for that. That was a great question. Oh, and I think we have one more group. If you'd like to answer.
I think maybe just to close out for Southern California Edison, we do have our processes documented internally. We do use them across different organizations such as GridOps and our reliability reporting team. I don't think any of them are public, but we could summarize them at a high level if there's interest in kind of seeing what our process looks like.
Thank you for that. I'll actually data request the documents if I have to, so it's okay.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have anything else to add to that question? Okay. I see Stephen Moss, you have some comments in the comments section. So Stephen Moss says, seems like the utilities are saying that everything is generally fine as is. They should provide a clear crosswalk to CPUC's proposed data approach. And also, tribal, local government, and small business experience is that it's difficult to chase down data, even for their own circuits, with no overall reliability, investment, or planning context provided at a community level. Very insightful comments. Thank you so much for that. I think so let's speak to the first comment. Seems like the IOUs providing a clear crosswalk to the CPUC's proposed data approach. I believe a big part of this conversation is just setting the floor on this recommendation. There will be, we are hoping to have many, many more opportunities for the actual process to implement some of these suggestions would be. And so I think it's really good to focus right now on just some of the limitations, some of the challenges, and some of the just initial reactions to these recommendations. But I think if anyone from the IOUs would like to speak to that clear crosswalk to the proposed data approaches, feel free to.
Hey, this is John Eric Tolman from PG&E. I do want to respond to that. I think we're saying far from that everything's fine. We definitely feel the siloed approach to multiple reports and then the resulting confusion when someone looks at one report and looks at another report and tries to make a comparison to figure out what's going on. And we go to try to respond to that. And it's very clear that it's not transparent because of those siloed without even, so that's very clear to us. So we see that as a very big opportunity as part of this proceeding, and have high hopes that that can be resolved. I think that will make it better for all parties. So just want to make sure that PG&E is not in a position where we're like, yep, steady state, things should stay just exactly where they are. In fact, we have high hopes that, and that's why I led off with the fact that we're in a part of a multi-year approach to improve our data, and we feel that we're aligned with the objectives of this proceeding. So thanks.
Yeah, this is John Wu with Southern California Edison. I want to echo what John Eric's saying. I don't think we're saying that everything is generally fine as is. we identified that there are definitely opportunities for us to incrementally improve upon our existing reporting structure. We're really looking for meaningful and effective recommendations, prioritizing the most important metrics that are valuable for us to gain the insights and abilities that we're looking for that are defined in some of Stephen's comments here, and then working incrementally towards the longer term approach of getting to that database. So we're in support of that.
Would anyone else have anything else to add to that comment? Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Stephen, for that really insightful comment. Next, I would like to, so we have focused a bit on the database recommendation and some of the feedback and reactions to that. I do want to highlight some of the other processes. So going in the line, let's talk about the secure file transfer process. What are the initial reactions to this process being suggested? And just to remind everyone, this is a direct organization to organization transfer of data through a secured framework. So feel free. And I'm sorry, I can't see people's hands from my control. So if I miss anyone, please feel free to just come off mute.
Brittany, do you want the utilities to go first, or can anybody jump in?
You can go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So I see. I'm confused. Secure data transfer file is a method for moving data. A database is a method for recording data, and reports are a method for recording data. I don't see an alternative to the secure file transfer process. So I don't see it as an or, it's a necessity. You're either going to be transferring a database or you're going to be transferring reports. So can you explain to me how it differs, what alternative we have?
Yes, thank you so much for mentioning that. So these options, we don't want to set one option as the only option if it turns out to be more feasible to take a piecemeal approach. So say, for example, if we were to update existing reliability reports, but in the meantime, we still need to conduct analyses to address reliability, a good interim process would be that secure file transfer to supplement what already exists. And this would just be to more refine that process that's already in place to make sure that we're aligning it with our future initiatives, with our future processes that we will build as far as updates to the reliability reports or updates to a database. Does that answer the question?
Oh, well, I still don't see what the option is, to be honest. It's like we have secure file transfer now. We'll have some form of secure file transfer in the future. It's just a matter of honing exactly what we transfer. Is that the correct understanding? Because there is no other alternative. We're not going to do it any other way.
No, I think what the secure file transfer, and I think, is a proxy for kind of enhancing what already exists as ad hoc requests. So increasing the data that we are currently collecting and receiving that through a secure file transfer, be it geospatial or however the form of that data comes, that's what we're referring to when we're referring to that box. So not fully building out this database, but we do need additional data variables to collect that don't exist in current reliability reports, or as an interim step before we can update current reliability reports. I think that that's what that box is proxying in the way that we've been discussing it, or meant to be discussing it.
Okay, thank you.
Similar to what happens in the WMPQDR and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. And so I'd like to just open the floor for any other reactions to this process. Might there be any logistical or just drilling down into each box we're looking at here, might there be any logistic issues with this process or possibly challenges that this process might pose in your mind? And this question goes out to the IOUs.
This is Lawrence with SDG&E, and I welcome my colleagues at SDG&E also chime in. But for up front, right? We'd obviously need to know how much data and the frequency of support, refreshing the data, if you will. That's going to be of concern, making sure that it's been audited and that it's been cleansed of any customer data, if there is any, especially since we're providing customer types. I think for me that would be the first upfront issue. Anything else from anybody at SDG&E? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leave the floor open for any other responses.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with what Lawrence is saying here. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to just say I echo some of the concerns that Lawrence is bringing up, and I point back to how can we incrementally augment our existing reports in order to get to the long-term vision that we want to get to. Just implementing a wholesale database and a change without fully understanding what data are we trying to gather? Are we just trying to gather every data out there and make, do analysis or insights off of that? Or can we say, this is where we're targeting our top issues or focus areas to improve upon, and this is where we should be delivering our reliability metrics or data to point us to those issues. We could do that incrementally while in parallel executing on the framework for developing this database.
Thank you. Very well put.
Thank you.
Any other reactions?
Yeah, Brittany, this is Stuart from PG&E. One of our colleagues is trying to trying to unmute herself. She's having some trouble doing so, but she would like to express some concerns as well.
Okay.
Let's see, Melissa.
You guys hear me?
Melissa Boyd.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes,
Melissa.
we can hear you now.
Perfect. And I appreciate that. Stuart was coming off of so that with this file trace, but typically we've submitted the C on how large the data file is. So we have to break up and do small upload, transfer data to energy safety. They SharePoint site that is secure, and that seems to take large volumes of data fast and does not time out. So maybe based on volume of the data that we're too securely keep it intact. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that feedback. That's very helpful. Okay. Now I'd like to drill into the updating. The secure file transfer was a little bit of a softball because that's already in place, but the updating existing reliability reports option, let's drill into that just a little bit more. I would like to ask a question regarding, now this is in no way asking you to have a process prepared or have a crosswalk prepared right now, but your initial reaction to that suggestion, what do you think are the best steps to take in order to achieve that process? And this question also goes out to the IOUs.
And Brittany, maybe if perhaps I can at least start. Actually, I should also introduce myself. I'm Julian Ennis. I'm a utilities engineer with Energy Division, and I'm the main point of contact for the annual reliability reports that get submitted to the commission every year in July per D1601-008. So I have a little bit of proverbial skin in the game, a little bit, but I think, you know, especially with these particular annual reports, I think there's a broad range of data that the CPUC is sort of, or there's a broad range of end uses for reliability data that, you know, we're interested in as the regulatory, you know, body, be that sort of overall reliability and how it compares to, you know, regional and national averages, or you know what I think I've heard it a couple of times within you know, this workshop is about sort of the problem areas that are on the that are on the grid that we can kind of hone in on, as is sort of, you know, the broader focus of this particular OIR per the sort of initial OIR and scoping memo. You know, I think this is obviously going to be a process where we're going to have to meet in the middle between sort of the needs of the CPUC in terms of what we want to do with this data, the needs of sort of individual stakeholders, as you know, we've seen from Stephen Moss, trying to gain access to this data to better understand, you know, their own options, you know, in terms of thinking about their own reliability and resilience solutions, and also sort of, you know, utilities capability to sort of provide the data in a format that can be useful for sort of everything, that's happening. You know, I think, you know, yes, we could update the existing reliability reports, but I think that's also equally going to depend on sort of ability to access a lot of the underlying data that's used to sort of generate the reports. And I think that's, you know, I think maybe that's what this conversation is trying to drive at right now, is not necessarily, you know, reinventing the wheel of like, how do we, you know, what exactly needs to be provided for this exact thing, but more of a like, can we start to access and see under the hood to see that sort of the more granular data that builds up into these requirements, so that we can potentially shape, you know, a database or a file transfer, or even something like tiered access to this kind of data. So just wanted to provide my 2 cents on that.
Hey, Julian, this is John Wu from SoCal, or Southern California Edison. I echo some of the areas that you're talking about, and maybe the first step could be linking the secured file transfer with our reliability reports and providing the data that we summarize into that report in a spreadsheet or some type of format into secure file transfer, so that you can easily, you know, comb through the data and utilize as you see fit. You know, where we've been talking about is, can you prioritize what data you want to see from us, define it in the criteria for the reliability reports, and we can provide that in conjunction with the spreadsheet, so that the areas that you're looking to focus on, we can, you know, readily provide that information, and kind of have that back and forth and say, oh, this is the way we want to see it, or, you know, at what granularity you want to see it, what frequency, and we can kind of, you know, work to improve that while sharing the details of the information in like a spreadsheet format. And then you can tell us, oh, that's not enough, or we need something over here. And that's what we're looking for guidance on.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm sure you'd ask your reliability folks, and I'm probably the most annoying person because they have to fulfill a few data requests every year.
Not at all, actually,
for my internal reporting. But no, I think that's a good point. And I think, you know, again, I think there also needs to be sort of this kind of collaboration sort of and sort of harmonization between a lot of the different sort of data streams that we're asking for, to kind of see if there's a common set that we can ask for that would help us do exactly that. But for the annual reports, for potentially PSPS reporting, for potentially things like safety and operational metrics reporting. So this is, I think this is a good conversation to have, and I think it sort of leads us into the fact that there's a lot of different requirements, and we need to find that meeting point in the middle of where the data, what level of data we need to sort of help build the underpinnings of that.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you.
So Julian, this is Jim. So I think maybe one thing we can go back to is, can we go to slide 10 in the PowerPoint? I hope I'm looking at the right one. Slide 10, reliability reporting sources. Slide 10. Or maybe it's before this.
I believe it's slide
It's the one-
12.
Okay. So just from listening to all the conversations, one of the questions I'd love to just pose, just as a starting question, right? I have a bunch of questions, but this is the starting question. Does it matter which one of these we choose as our base? If we want, like, what I mean by that is this: we've already established these all come in at different times. Some of them don't come in from other sources, but let's just use these for these. This is the universe that we sort of created, and I know we can add to that universe down the line. But if this is the universe, because we all kind of agree, timing, and is there one that's better to start off with than the other? Meaning, like, should we use annual reliability report? I think someone said that as their starting point, or is it the WMPQDR as the starting point? Just want to get a feel from folks that have to use the data and pull the data together, taking into account definitions across the board, variables across the board. Is there a better starting point for this?
I'll say from Southern California Edison's perspective, the annual electric reliability report is focused on reliability and the discussion around that. The other proceedings or reports have different focus areas or specific requests that they're trying to address. So although reliability information may be shared as part of those reports, it's, in my mind, not the intended purpose of that proceeding and where we're looking to make improvements on reliability performance. And so I think from Southern California Edison's perspective, the AERR would be the base that you would want to build upon. And then if it seeks to align to similar timing or granularity of information across other proceedings, I think it could get there, but I'm really looking at it from a AERR perspective. That's my, to be fair, that is my my team's focus area. So that's what we produce on an annual basis. But that's where I'd be looking for guidance in order to make changes to what we're providing.
Okay. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to pit SE versus SDG&E, but I know that SDG&E said, I'm pretty sure the WMPQDR may be a better starting point, right? And the bigger question is, does it matter, right? So, I mean, from SDG&E, does that, I'm not trying to create a debate here. That's all I'm saying, right?
Yeah, and maybe to build upon that or clarify, the database that we pull our outage information from is shared across our QDR database and our reliability database. So it's pulling from the same source. But the information provided is, I mean, it's the wildfire mitigation plan. It's not the, you know, reliability mitigation plan. And so it's kind of additional data that's added on top of the WMP, not the sole purpose of that filing.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you. So on behalf of SDG&E, like we also agree that the annual electric reliability report is definitely a strong focus. Maybe we give a spreadsheet with all the list of outages. I think what we were mentioning before was leveraging the lessons learned from data governance and data schema from the existing QDR that we can put in place with the annual electric reliability report and the enhancements we want to make to the reliability report to indicate or to showcase the customer experience data for planned and unplanned outages.
All right. Thank you, Lawrence.
Melissa,
Is it PG&E or someone else? Sorry to cut you off.
can you guys hear me? Peace Warrior.
Melissa, your connection is pretty rough here. So we're hearing it every other word.
The scheme and the data.
Oh, Melissa, we can't hear you. I think we may have lost you.
It's like when that really important part of the movie comes, and then it just like the power goes out. Not the power goes out, but my cable goes out. So
Yeah. Well, good. Is that you, Melissa?
Are you able to avoid?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Better? Okay.
Yes.
Apologies for that, and thank you. I mentioned maybe we also look at in first, and this will help us on this journey collaboration with one another. Data dictionary and data schema, based on trying to align with the schema and common definitions to really understand what we're looking to get more insights on, help us decide what is
Melissa, you are breaking
or
up.
maybe that provides. Sir? No.
We basically heard only like 4 words of what you just said.
Okay, I apologize. I will put my comments in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, so then I guess my other question, sorry, Brittany, is that so if we were to, let's say we have 2 out of 3 and Melissa's gonna throw in her comments, which I think would help kind of get us an understanding of where might be a good starting point for this in terms of the base is, I guess, if we were to take this and add it, is that a feasible thing to do? Like, meaning taking some of the PSPS, the QDR, the protective equipment and safety device settings, and then anything that we would, and then plus, right? There's some stuff that we talked about today that would be the plus, and part of that plus is like the protective equipment and safety device settings, but it's some other stuff too. Is that a feasible process for us in terms of just, it sounds like people want it, right? The definitions across all of the different data reports.
Jim,
Ian?
Jim, can I just say something about this? If we do that, all these reports are report at different scales. And like have different, so some report at circuit level, some report at division level, some report at territory level, or some combination thereof. And some report at sub-circuit level. So, we're going to have to get some coherence of hierarchy there if we're going to try and if we're just going to try and mush these silos together.
Right.
And I don't think that's a good idea. That's a kind of very ad hoc way of trying to push these things together. And that you're going to create as much work trying to make them conform to each other as you would trying to collect the data properly.
I mean, maybe to piggyback on that a little bit, I guess as a gating question to this too is, how is there a single data set that you can sort of ask for that underpins all these reports? I think I could see the answer being yes or being no, but I don't necessarily have enough knowledge to sort of make that determination. But if there is a single data set that underpins all of them, it feels like that's what we should be looking at, not necessarily trying to smush all the silos together, but instead having all of the data from which we can draw those same conclusions within those requirements.
And does that make sense?
That does make sense.
Because I was going to ask you that question in terms of, so.
That makes sense.
Okay, back to that. All right, so then back to the out to the IOUs then. Does that make sense? Is that possible? Is it feasible? Is it a reasonable thing to ask?
So this is Lawrence with SDG&E. So are you looking for, just to clarify, you would want, you don't want aggregated data. You prefer to have the data, for every single outage. Is that what we're looking at, or?
Well, I think what it is that, and Julian, correct me if I'm wrong, or Ian, correct me if I'm wrong. There's possibly a data set that underpins all of these data streams that are on the screen. And the thing about each of these silos is that they actually ask for they have created different units of reporting, meaning like circuit level, division level, things like that. But the question is there a data set that underpins all of these? And then would that be able to go into sort of the data and schema? And I'm trying to give Melissa a voice here too from PG&E. A data schema and data dictionary, because what we're really trying to look at is, I think this is all doable. The real question is it feasible, right?
So for the outage data for SDG&E, it's going to come from the reliability data, right? That populates the electric reliability report, the QDR, and everything else, right? So obviously the infrastructure upgrades and things like that will come from different sources, but a bulk of the data that we're looking at for, how many outages a customer might experience or how long, that's going to come from the reliability data.
Ian.
So, I want to give the opportunity for the other utilities to respond on how feasible this is before I jump in here.
Oh, well, as like I said, it takes time to audit, to verify the outage, ensure everything is coded correctly. In fact, it could take sometimes months, and honestly, part of the reason why we provide the annual electric reliability report at SDG&E is because at the end of the year we actually true everything up. So there could be some discrepancies or wrong outage cause codes, or there could be undetermined outages that have to be updated. Whatever. Those are just a few examples. And so that takes time. And so obviously the concern would be the frequency. If we look at, how we provide it today, that's totally doable, annually. It can be done like we do quarterly for the WMP QDR, but that's for a small subset of outages compared to the aggregated system.
So I'd like to maybe piggyback on what Melissa put in the chat here. I agree that similarly for SCE's WMP QDR submission, we do have a lot of the data that they're defining here on outages, customer meters, some of the circuit details. So in terms of feasibility, it's there already in some of the reporting that we do. Like I mentioned, though, that's a different proceeding and different purpose that the data is provided for. And even in the slides that SCE presented, we talked about what does it take in order to implement something similar to what we did for QDR. It's a significant investment of time, resources, and process change in order to enable some of this to happen. So in terms of feasibility, it can be done, but we haven't quite quantified what resources would be needed to implement it. I hope that answers your question, Jim. See you trying to get off mute, but
appreciate the engagement, John.
Yeah. Any other comments on that specific topic?
Yeah, I've got several, to be honest, Brittany.
Okay.
So I would appreciate it if we could try and step away from letting the reporting requirements drive the actual data collection. Because there's always going to be more reporting requirements and more requirements, and then you get into the bottleneck issue of actually processing the data and actually reporting it out. You're always going to have ad hoc reporting requirements. You're always going to have new things we want to know or somebody else wants to know about how an outage works at different levels, different scales, kind of different geographies. We have the tribal and local government geographies, which we've not even touched on. And the utilities at the moment, and I appreciate why you do this, are only thinking in terms of their system, of their circuits. So I genuinely think we should all step away from thinking about circuits just for a bit and purely think about the location of your customers. I understand there are privacy issues. I understand there are confidentiality issues. I understand there are cost issues. But I think we need to step away from those and conceptually start to understand what we're trying to do here. And that is trying to understand the customer's experience and get away from reporting requirements and from circuits, and allow the cities and the counties to support you, to support the actual customers when we have reliability issues. And so ideally, I would like the utilities to focus on assuring the quality of the data that goes into a database and a data product that is at the right grain, that you can support all the different hierarchies. You can support the cities and the counties. You can support the tribal entities. You can support your own system requirements. And that's about recording the outage and accurately recording the outage event, and then building up from there. Because if we do that accurately and put in place a regime of updating effectively, then we can support everybody. And I understand, as I say, I understand the cost, and I understand the cost, but we don't know what the cost is. But we need to see what that is. We don't know the cost in time is. We don't know what the cost in actual dollars is. But we need to kind of start there and then decide whether we're going to actually make economies based on an understanding of what it would actually cost to implement. So let's actually, as we made in our recommendations back in December, let's split the actual recording of what the utility is doing of the outage event and the quality assurance of the outage event from reporting requirements, because those are always going to change. Let's also think about splitting it from your metrics, like your SAIDI and your KD and your SAFE and all those things, because those are all just derived averages, basically. What about the 75th percentile? What about the 95th percentile? What about details of your distributions that you need to understand on how you're truly actually interacting with your customers? Well, none of that is available through the current reporting. None of that is available if we prematurely aggregate data. And I know I'm saying this, I've said this, I'll say this all in comments again, but we need to start slowly implementing a step change, allowing the utilities to focus on putting quality data into the system and allowing the supporting agencies and the regulatory agencies and the cities and counties to be able to extract the data from the system that will allow them to support the customer. And there are ways of doing this, but at the moment, just saying it is too expensive doesn't really tell us how expensive it is. So that's my comments to the counties on this, and frankly to Commissioner Baker, that there is a way of doing this, but we have no real sight of the cost, and there are ways. The utilities have their speciality where they can focus on. The supporting agencies, the regulatory agencies have their speciality that they can focus on. I'm not seeing that at the moment. I'm seeing us going down the road of trying to do more of the same. If we go down the road of trying to add to existing requirements, add to existing reporting, we're not collapsing these silos. We're not actually serving the customer any better. That's my soapbox. Sorry, folks. That's the end of my comments.
Maybe if I could respond to that real quick, Ian.
Sure,
in the last workshop, SCE had presented on the different reports that we provide to different bodies, and one of them that we talked about was the city reliability reports, kind of speaking to how do we look at the community level, the outage or reliability experience that they're seeing at the city level. And so we do provide that on an annual basis. And so it can show a comparison of the city that you're looking at versus the whole system-wide reliability performance. So we do provide that to the communities so that they can get a click down into what they're experiencing.
But what about the sub-city level? What about the community level? What about the individual neighborhood that is the hardest to help neighborhood that may need more support? I mean, you know, you understand, you and I understand there is an infinite number of ways of breaking these things down. And so whilst you are able to supply these reports, they say there's always 101 of the reports that could be run. So the problem, it doesn't kind of solve the problem that you do that sort of thing at the city level already, because that doesn't tell that individual community or a low-income community exactly how they're performing. It doesn't work with, you know, so there's always ways of breaking this down. So my point is, how do we work to that being self-service versus and let you focus on what you have the speciality in, which is understanding the quality, your operational systems, and getting quality information out of operational systems. That's, you know, I see there's two different roles there, and I don't see, you know, I don't see why you can help serve the second role by improving the first part of it.
Thank you so much for that feedback and great discussion. These are really important topics to touch on and to discuss. I just wanted to, before we move along in the discussion, I just wanted to highlight some questions surrounding these issues that were highlighted surrounding timing. I know, Lawrence, you discussed a point on timing and how that is a factor in generating these reports and or even QA, quality assurance, quality control for this information within your data sets. Does anyone want to speak more on that? And some specific elements you can talk about, possibly the timing constraints caused by, I know it takes a lot of quality control and quality insurance, or quality control and quality assurance, but also that timeline for aggregation. How long does it take to take this information once it's cleaned up, then aggregate it in order to feed these reports? So if you can speak on that a little bit.
This is Lawrence again. And I think I really want to sit down with the folks who manage the data and manage it, and see, so that we can address a lot of the concerns that Ian shared earlier. There is a lot of things that we can do with the data, and off the top of my head, I can't speak to how well we can manipulate that to get that to them. I know we record our outages as events, and even at the circuit level. You mentioned circuit level earlier, but by the circuit level, we know what areas that it touches, and which customers have been affected. It's just how to manipulate that data and to get it. That I also need to learn. So I'm sorry I can't provide a strong answer for that today.
That's a good answer. Thank you.
Perhaps, Brittany, maybe I can ask a bit of a corollary question to what you're asking as well. And
yes,
I think I absolutely support. I want good data. I want good data, and I want folks to have access to good data. But I guess too, as a question, do the utilities see any ways to improve the collection of data such that the QA/QC lift on that data thereafter is lessened, or is that an ignorant thing to assume that there's the possibility of, and that there's always going to be a difficult level of QA/QC to provide on the data?
Hi, Julian. Melissa Boyd here for PG&E. Hopefully the audio is a little bit better. It really depends, I would say, on what is being asked for. If we're making relationships between one kind of data and another, sometimes those relationships don't naturally exist. And so when we create them, we can have confidence in what we've put together, but it does require a higher fidelity of QC. If we're asked to, with more certainty, look at things like suspected initiating cause, right? That requires additional QA/QC after the event before we have more comfort. If we're, just trying to understand some of the more snapshot things in time, like how many customers do you currently have, we have maybe more confidence and less need to do a QC on a data set like that. So it just depends on really what is being sought, and then if there's those natural relationships or the evolving nature of the data.
Thank you. I think that makes sense.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on Julian's question, comment? Okay, so I wanted to ask, I guess we're getting different feedback from different IOUs depending on your specific management of your data. And I want to just see where there might be relations between that. So I noticed, so Megan, I'm sorry, not Megan. Megan actually has a comment. Actually, before I ask this question, I'm going to address Megan's comment. Megan says, we support Ian's recommendation that there be a focus on data that will quantify customer impacts and focus less on averages. The existing data reporting, as referenced by SCE, provides some information, but it is never as useful or granular as the utilities represent it as being. It's a great comment, Megan. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that definitely is a common theme we're hearing among stakeholders. Does anyone want to speak? Any comments on that? Any reactions to that comment? Okay, so I'll go into Camilla's comment next. Camilla Stroh. CCSF appreciates staff's work on this process of collecting data, but to Ian's point, We'd really like to see a workshop focused on the data already collected versus data needed. As a local government, this discussion is still very abstract, and we'd like to see further discussion on the feasibility and more granular data, specifically customer level experiences as recommended by Cal Advocates. Very great point. Make sure to highlight that. Thank you very much for that commentary. That was very helpful. Any reactions, insights into that? Actually, Camilla, if you could just speak a little bit more on that. I just want to know what level of granularity would you expect or would you prefer in this comment? So for this information, as far as the information that we currently collect, what level of understanding do you want us to present on? And feel free to write it in the comments or come off mute if you'd like. I'll go ahead and open up another question just in case while you're writing that, I know it takes some time to formulate questions. So as I was saying with the IOUs, I just want to dig into some elements that I've been hearing throughout this presentation and just understand where some relations are happening, some similarities are happening among your data management strategies. So pertaining to the level of aggregation, so we suggested meter level reporting. And I know some recommendations by IOUs is for actual circuit level reporting. And it sounds, I believe it was PG&E that said that is not possible. It's difficult to do due to the nature of circuit level, the circuit levels changing depending on circumstances based on meters. So I want to ask how you handle that when reporting. Is this something that causes is this something that is taxing to put together in these reports? Might this be something that other IOUs are facing as well? If anyone can speak to that, please feel free to.
Hi, Brittany. Melissa here from PG&E. So we can report at the customer level. That's not a problem. And one of the recommendations, right, would be at the customer level to include something like year-to-date outage count. What we were suggesting is that maybe circuit ID would not be the correct field to try to make relationships across different initiatives because the circuit ID evolves due to configurations of the grid, switching. And so if you're trying to make these relationships across other kinds of data types like infrastructure, it was just something to be aware of. That it's right a snapshot in time, but the grid does change. And so that was the concern, is the circuit ID being that primary key that sort of joins everything together. But if the goal is to understand customers and how many outages they have experienced, we could absolutely, provide the meter ID or service point ID to indicate the customer and then a count of year-to-date outages.
Wonderful.
Same for SDG&E. At the meter level, we can provide that data. In fact, we have the capability today. If you request outage impacts for a specific customer, that can be done today.
And I understand it with your data system as well, or your business as well, the circuits do shift and they change as well. Is that a feature of your experience?
Yeah. Our system is very dynamic. Yes.
Okay.
I'd say for Southern California Edison, we do have meter level information and outage information, but speaking to an earlier point, there is more rigor associated with the validation and QA/QC process, similar to what Melissa had also said, which when you start joining data across, meter and circuit level outages and things like that, the validation process gets a little bit more complex.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Very good responses. And I see that Camilla has responded. Thank you very much. So you say outage information for specific customers, critical public safety partners. Okay, so that would be the level of information you would like us to drill into as far as our existing reports. I think that's a great suggestion, and I think that would be a great idea for a future workshop. Thank you so much for that. All right, and so I just want to route this back to one last element that I just wanted to look at. And that would be, I see some common themes among our discussion today surrounding levels of granulation for data available, logistics of implementing a larger process such as a more involved process such as creating a database versus updating existing reliability reports. And we have some good recommendations on the reports that we can start with, such as the AERR or the WMPQDR, with some commentary about that. So I would like to next just, if we could step back from all of the challenges that might be faced or the budgetary concerns or the limitations, what is the most ideal process in your mind? And this is open to all participants. What would be the most ideal process? I think we already have some ideas of what the stakeholders believe would be the ideal process, but I, want to highlight anybody who has any comments on that. So ideal process for enhancing data reporting and management.
Just to clarify, Brittany, are you asking for sort of an envisioned end state to this whole sort of, okay, that makes more sense. Thank you. I think maybe I can try and take it some sort of stab at it. I think I think I touched upon this earlier, that we're sort of sitting, the ideal sort of end product sort of sits at the intersection between the utilities, us, and any sort of local government or customer that's trying to that's sort of trying to figure out how this information can be used. But I think again, going back to it, is if we have all of the really granular, like, meter level data that can sort of underpin those kind of analyses, we can be very flexible about how we respond to problems, or how we look at sort of reliability in these sort of outages in a way that can help us in further tracks of this proceeding look at those scoped issues. So I think to me, what that might look like would be some sort of tiered access database where you have you can use the PHMSA, the Pipeline Hazard Safety Management maps as sort of an example, where you have different levels of access depending on what your role is. So there's a public access where it's limited data that wouldn't necessarily be a problem with things like the 1515 rule and CEII, all the way up through sort of privileged access, where you have access to all the information, and then you as appropriate, that houses a lot of this information. I think we could talk data freshness, maybe even quarterly. I know that's probably going to set off a lot of alarm bells at the utilities, saying like, oh, that's going to be a lot of work. But again, we're talking about an ideal envisioned end state here. And I think sort of based on that, then we can figure out how to sort of then, with that database existing, with that tiered access existing, we can sort of start to figure out how those individual reports maybe can be updated or upgraded, or how we can, figure out how to query the database in order to sort of answer these questions. So to me, I think that would be an ideal envisioned end state, but I'm very open to other suggestions about how this might look.
I'll say, Julian, you're hitting all the points that I really agree with. You mentioned concerns that we talked about with the 1515 CEII, and how do we get around those issues? If in the ideal state, if those weren't roadblocks to providing some of this level of or granularity of the data, and in an ideal state where the resources, the cost, the time to implement some of these are not an issue, we fully support the full database and the tiers of information that's available. It's just, we reiterate that there are, challenges to implementing this, and if there's a phased approach to how we can prioritize what we want to fix first or address first, we can implement those over time in order to get to that ideal state, which is that database across the different tiers of data. Yeah, without those concerns also that Julian, that you're talking about too. So fully supportive of this. Want to make sure that's clear.
Thank you, John. Any other reactions or responses? It's great feedback, and it sounds like overall people are wanting a more iterative approach to addressing these goals, taking it step by step by looking at what we have, being reasonable with what we have and building off of that, and potentially down the line creating something like this. So if there was, let's see, any other reactions or comments to that topic before we move on?
Maybe Brittany, just to echo what everybody is saying, is we love the partnership and love working together to help share data, be transparent. And then, by us working together, we're able to make sure that we understand what the prioritization is, what the schema objectives are, and that we can work on solutioning that for all involved.
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much for that point. That's definitely something that we are definitely trying to highlight in this process, is that we want it to be as collaborative as possible. A big part of the feedback that we're receiving today, I think, is surrounding just sort of the taxingness of these processes, and, even having a more relative data connection between CPUC and IOUs, we could even help lift that load of that quality assurance and quality control to a certain extent, given our own data management capabilities. And, that would be something potentially down the line that could be explored. But I do think it is the main takeaway that we wanted to communicate was that this is not us trying to dictate what the path we go down. This is us trying to find the most reasonable and feasible option for improving data, Okay. And I want to open it back up for any last burning questions. If anyone else would like to come up and speak on anything, if you have any questions at all, this is an open floor question to anyone. And feel free, if you're writing in the comment section, go ahead and write. I guess with this, I want to close with just any major takeaways that anyone would like for us to end on with this discussion. Are there any points that participants in this proceeding, in this workshop, would like for CPUC to take away? Any points that they would like IOUs to take away regarding the topics we discussed today?
If I could just add in conclusion, this is John Eric Tallman from PG&E. Just wonder, I know I said this before, I just want to take the opportunity at the end here that the objectives in this proceeding we see is in line with the process that we're already undertaking to improve our reliability data. We very much want to achieve removing the siloed reporting and simplifying that. We think that there's lots of value there for both regulators and IOUs so that we can better serve the customers in the state of California. So really looking forward to the next steps, and I hope that really appreciate the feedback from everyone. So thanks for the opportunity to comment.
Okay, I'll give 30 more seconds for any last commentary, any last points, reactions, or anything like that. It's a little different when you're on virtual because I can't see people's reactions to see if they're trying to formulate a question. So I'm just opening the floor a little longer to make sure that anybody has a chance. Okay, well, thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure moderating this discussion. I think we've gotten some very fantastic feedback and some very great takeaways to build on and go with our next steps. I'm going to now pass things back off to my colleague Richard to continue the workshop. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brittany. And we'll be moving on to talking about the next step. So what's going to happen after this workshop? And to talk a little bit about that is my supervisor, program project supervisor, Audrey Williams. And I'll pass it off to you, Audrey.
Thanks, Richard. I really want to thank everybody for their participation today. This is a difficult process to navigate, but I am reassured that we're all on the same page and wanting to improve the ratepayer customer experience and their understanding of their holistic reliability picture. This work is hopefully going to lead into a staff proposal here imminently on laying out what we believe should be the next steps in improving this process. I want to encourage everyone that participated today, both from the IOUs, but all of our attendees, to continue to stay in touch on what the individual experience is on that prioritization process. So what individuals feel like we need to prioritize moving forward as we do try to do things as quickly as possible with an eye towards the long term. So understanding that even as we undertake actions today, it doesn't mean that we're not thinking about kind of what we would like to see end up in the long term of this proceeding. So as I said, hopefully we will see a staff proposal here soon based on all of the feedback that we received today. And then once all of that is wrapped up, continue on to further tracks of this proceeding. And so I think that's all that we have for today. We're about 30 minutes early, which is great. Yes, as you said. But I open the floor again for anybody else if they want to have any final comments before we adjourn for the day. And Richard will send out, or someone will send out the slides from today to the service list. And the recording of the workshop will also be up on the CPUC website. And our contact information is in these slides. So as I said, I encourage you to reach out to us individually as we go through this process of writing this staff proposal. So again, thank you to everybody that was here today. Thank you to all of my colleagues and all of the SPD staff for all of their hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.